Ladies and gentlemen, kindness is often misunderstood. Some see it as a sign of weakness, an open door to be exploited. But the truth is, kindness is not an obligation, it is a choice. It comes from strength, not fragility. And those who misuse it will one day come to regret their actions. Too often we hear stories of people who give endlessly, only to be met with ingratitude or manipulation. They offer their time, their energy, their trust, only to be taken for granted. But here's the reality. Kindness without boundaries invites exploitation. If you do not set limits, there will always be someone willing to push past them. However, life has a way of teaching lessons. The one who misuses kindness may believe they have gained something in the short term, whether it's support, favors, or sense of control, but over time, they lose something far greater: trust, respect, and genuine relationships. When kindness is taken for granted, there comes a day when it is no longer given, and that is when regret sets in. Suddenly, the people they once leaned on are no longer there. The warmth they depended on is gone, and they are left to face the consequences of their choices alone. So, to those who offer kindness, remember this: your generosity is valuable, but it is not limitless. Protect it, set boundaries, and never allow yourself to be drained by those who do not appreciate what you give. And to those who misuse kindness, beware. Because the day will come when you realize that what you lost was worth far more than what you gained. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is often mistaken for weakness, but in reality, it is one of the strongest virtues a person can possess. To be kind is not to be submissive. It is to consciously choose to act with patience, understanding, and generosity, even when faced with adversity. However, because kindness is frequently misunderstood, it is often exploited by those who believe they can take advantage of it without consequence. The reason kindness is mistaken for weakness is that it often involves restraint. It is easy to respond to aggression with aggression, to meet rudeness with rudeness. But it takes a truly strong individual to choose kindness when the situation does not demand it. Strength is not simply about dominance or control. It is about having the ability to act otherwise, but choosing a path that builds rather than destroys. A truly strong person is not one who always wins through force, but one who understands the value of goodwill and long-term relationships. Kindness is a choice, not an obligation. People often assume that those who are kind must always be kind, no matter the circumstance. This is where they are wrong. A person who is genuinely kind knows that their kindness is a tool, not a weakness. They know when to give and when to withhold, when to extend patience and when to assert boundaries. They understand that kindness does not mean being a pushover, but rather having the wisdom to recognize when it is appropriate to be generous and when it is necessary to say no. Those who misuse kindness often believe they have found an easy way to get what they want. They manipulate, take advantage, and assume that kindness is an endless resource. But what they fail to realize is that kindness, when abused, does not lead to greater gain. It leads to inevitable loss. People who are mistreated for their generosity do not remain generous forever. Eventually they learn, they recognize patterns, they withdraw their kindness from those who do not appreciate it. This is why the strongest individuals in any society are those who balance kindness with strength. They are not kind because they have no other option. They are kind because they understand its power. They also understand that their kindness is valuable and should not be wasted on those who take it for granted. In history, some of the most influential figures have been those who wielded kindness with wisdom. They were not weak, they were strategic. They built relationships, inspired loyalty, and created lasting impacts because they knew when to offer kindness and when to stand firm. Even in personal relationships, the people we respect the most are often those who are kind but not easily manipulated. The lesson here is clear. Kindness is not weakness. It is a strength that must be used wisely. Those who recognize its power and set boundaries will never be exploited for long, and those who misuse kindness will eventually come to regret it when they realize that the very thing they took for granted was in fact what they needed the most. Setting boundaries is essential. Kindness is a virtue, but without boundaries, it can become a source of personal exhaustion and frustration. Many people grow up believing that being kind means always saying yes, always being available, and always putting others before themselves. However, this is a flawed understanding of kindness. True kindness is not about self-sacrifice at the cost of one's own well-being. It is about knowing when to give and when to protect oneself from being taken advantage of. Setting boundaries is essential because, without them, kindness can be misused. There will always be people who take without giving, who expect generosity without gratitude, and who see kindness as a tool they can exploit rather than a gift to be appreciated. If a person continues to give without setting limits, they risk falling into a cycle of exhaustion, resentment, and even self-doubt. They may begin to question whether kindness is worth it at all. But the problem is not kindness itself. The problem is a lack of boundaries. When someone learns to set limits, they can continue to be kind without feeling drained or manipulated. Boundaries allow a person to distinguish between those who genuinely appreciate their kindness and those who only seek to use it for their own gain. They provide clarity in relationships, whether personal or professional, by ensuring that kindness is given in a way that is healthy and one of the biggest misconceptions about setting boundaries is that it is selfish. Many people, especially those with naturally generous hearts, fear that saying no will make them seem uncaring or cold. But the truth is, setting boundaries is an act of self-respect. It is a way of acknowledging that one's own time, energy, and emotions are valuable. A person who respects themselves enough to set limits will not only protect their own well-being, but will also earn the respect of others. In fact, people who misuse kindness often do so because they believe there are no consequences for their actions. When someone continuously says yes to unreasonable demands, they unintentionally reinforce the idea that their kindness has no limits. However, the moment they begin to assert their boundaries by saying no when necessary or walking away from toxic situations, those who have taken them for granted are forced to reevaluate their behavior. Setting boundaries does not mean becoming unkind. It means being wise about where kindness is placed. It means recognizing that not everyone is entitled to endless generosity, and that real relationships should be built on mutual respect, not one-sided expectations. A person who sets boundaries can still be kind, but they do so from a position of strength rather than obligation. At its core, kindness is most powerful when it is paired with self-respect. When a person learns to set boundaries, they do not become less kind, they become more intentional with their kindness. They give to those who appreciate them, support those who truly need it, and withdraw from those who only seek to take advantage. Those who misuse kindness will eventually regret it. Not because they were denied what they wanted in the moment, but because they will come to realize that they lost the trust and generosity of someone who truly cared. And once kindness is withdrawn, it is difficult to earn back. That is why setting boundaries is not just important, it is essential. The consequences of exploiting goodness. When people misuse kindness, they often believe they are gaining something, whether it be attention, favors, or emotional support, without any real cost. They assume that those who are kind will continue to give endlessly, that their patience will never run out, and that there will be no consequences for taking advantage of others. But this is a short-sighted view. In reality, misusing kindness comes with consequences, some immediate, others delayed, but all inevitable. One of the first consequences of exploiting kindness is loss of trust. Trust is built on mutual respect, and when someone continuously takes advantage of another's goodwill, they slowly erode that foundation. At first, the person being used may not say anything. They may give without hesitation, hoping that their generosity will be recognized and appreciated. But over time, they begin to notice the imbalance. They start to see that their kindness is not being reciprocated, and eventually they withdraw. And when trust is broken, it is not easily repaired. Another consequence is the damage to relationships. People who exploit kindness may find temporary benefits in the form of assistance, support, or preferential treatment. However, over time, they push people away. No one wants to feel like they are being used. And once that feeling settles in, it becomes difficult to maintain a healthy relationship. Whether it's a friendship, a professional connection, or even a family bond, people do not stay close to those who consistently take advantage of them. On a deeper level, those who misuse kindness also suffer personal consequences. They may not realize it immediately, but by relying on manipulation rather than mutual respect, they weaken their own character. Instead of developing genuine connections based on honesty and appreciation, they build a life based on selfishness and short-term gain. Eventually, this catches up with them. They find themselves without real support when they truly need it, surrounded by shallow relationships that lack depth and meaning. One of the most significant long-term consequences is loneliness. Many people who have a habit of exploiting kindness end up feeling isolated later in life. They may have once been surrounded by people who were willing to help, but after years of taking without giving, they wake up to an empty space where strong relationships should have been. People may still tolerate them out of obligation, but the warmth, care, and genuine connection they once enjoyed will be gone. Then comes regret. Regret is a powerful emotion, and it often arrives too late. Those who misuse kindness often do not recognize the damage they have caused until they experience the loss firsthand. When they find themselves in need of help and no one steps forward, when they reach out but are met with silence, that is when they realize what they have done. The regret is not just about losing people, it is about realizing that they misused something valuable, something that was given freely but could not be replaced once it was gone. The lesson is clear. Kindness should never be mistaken for weakness, and those who misuse it will, at some point, face the consequences. Whether through broken trust, damaged relationships, personal emptiness, or ultimate regret, the cost of exploiting goodness is always greater than the temporary benefits it may bring. Those who are kind should continue to be so, but with wisdom, and those who take advantage should beware, because one day they will realize that the very people they took for granted were the ones they needed the most. Personal growth comes from balance. Kindness is a powerful trait, but without balance it can lead to exhaustion, frustration, and even resentment. Many people assume that being kind means always putting others first, always saying yes, and always being available to help. While generosity is admirable, it should never come at the cost of one's own well-being. Personal growth comes from learning how to balance kindness with self-respect generosity with boundaries, and compassion with wisdom. One of the biggest challenges kind people face is understanding that it is okay to put themselves first sometimes. Society often praises selflessness, making it seem as if prioritizing one's own needs is selfish. However, this is a misunderstanding. A person who continuously gives without taking care of themselves will eventually burn out, and when that happens, they will have nothing left to offer, not to themselves, not to others, and not to the world. Balance means recognizing that kindness should not be limitless, just as we would not allow someone to take all of our physical possessions without question. We should not allow others to drain our emotional energy without limits. There is a difference between helping someone in need and enabling someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own actions. Growth comes from knowing when to extend kindness and when to step back. Another important aspect of balance is learning to say no without guilt. Many people struggle with this because they fear disappointing others or being seen as unkind. However, saying no is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of self-preservation. A well-balanced person understands that their time, energy, and resources are valuable, and they should be used wisely. Saying no, when necessary, allows a person to protect their mental and emotional well-being, ensuring that their kindness remains genuine rather than forced. People who fail to set boundaries often find themselves feeling used, undervalued, and even resentful. Over time, they may begin to question whether being kind is worth it at all. This is why balance is so important. When kindness is given freely but with intention, it remains a source of strength rather than a burden. Growth also comes from surrounding oneself with the right people. Not everyone deserves unlimited kindness, and not everyone will appreciate it. A person who wishes to grow must learn to recognize the difference between those who genuinely value them and those who only see them as a source of benefit. Strong, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, where kindness is exchanged rather than exploited. Personal growth is about understanding that kindness is most powerful when it is paired with self-awareness. It is not about being kind to everyone at all times, regardless of how they treat you. It is about knowing when to be kind, how to be kind, and when to step away from situations that drain rather than uplift. When kindness is balanced with self-respect, it becomes a tool for empowerment rather than a weakness to be exploited. Those who master this balance find that they are not only able to help others in meaningful ways, but also able to protect their own peace of mind. And those who try to take advantage of this kindness, they will learn sooner or later that a person who has achieved balance will not tolerate being used. They will come to regret their actions when they realize that kindness, when abused, is not infinite. And once it is withdrawn, it is often gone for good. Regret comes when they realize what they lost. One of life's most painful lessons is realizing the value of something only after it is gone. This is especially true when it comes to kindness. Those who misuse the kindness of others may not feel any immediate consequences. They may assume that generosity is endless, that patience has no limits, and that the people they rely on will always be there. But life has a way of teaching hard lessons, and one of the harshest is regret. The realization that they have lost something they can never get back. At first, people who take advantage of kindness feel as though they are winning. They get what they want without putting in much effort. They receive favors, attention, and support, all without having to offer much in return. But what they fail to see is that every act of unappreciated kindness slowly erodes the trust and goodwill of the person giving it. Every time they take without giving, the foundation of that relationship weakens. And one day they wake up to find that the kindness they once depended on is no longer there. Regret often comes too late. The person who was once generous with their time and energy has moved on. The friend who was always there to listen has stopped answering calls. The colleague who was always willing to help has set firm boundaries. The family member who was endlessly forgiving has finally had enough. At that moment, those who misused kindness begin to understand what they have lost. But by then, it is often irreversible. The loss is not just about favors or help. It is about losing genuine relationships. People who misuse kindness don't just lose access to someone's generosity. They lose respect, trust, and connection. They lose a person who truly cared for them. And that is something far more valuable than any short-term benefit they may have gained. This is why so many people look back on past relationships with friends, family, or even mentors and wish they had treated them differently. Regret is heavy because it comes with the knowledge that things could have been different if only they had appreciated what they had while it was there. But regret is also a teacher. Those who misuse kindness and experience its loss may eventually learn to change. They may come to understand that kindness is not a resource to be exploited, but a privilege to be valued. They may begin to treat others with more respect, recognizing that relationships should be built on mutual appreciation rather than one-sided benefit. For those who are kind, the lesson here is this: your kindness is valuable, and it should not be given without thought. It is important to recognize who truly deserves it and who is only taking advantage. When kindness is appreciated, it strengthens relationships. When it is misused, it weakens them. And when it is finally withdrawn, those who misused it will come to regret it deeply. To those who take kindness for granted, be careful, because when you finally realize its worth, it may be too late to get it back.